Hi there, it's Mr. Posobinsky, author, philosopher, artist, whatever, technician sometimes. But no, I was really noticing the date was like June 2nd now, man. It's like halfway into the year, and the year just started. Time flies, tempus fugit in Latin, but on all sundials, tempus fugit, time flies. Uh, so, anyway, I noticed a half a year had gone by, and I wanted to make a note for the record of what's going on this year. I was doing some social maneuvering around the first of the year, and other things going on with the apartment here, and but so anyway, then in the middle of that, I decided it's harmless, which it should have been, to tinker with my brain chemistry by deleting tobacco, just because, not tobacco, I haven't used it in 14, 13 years, I don't know. But vaping I used, but nicotine, and the doctor approved that of 20 years, that was for that condition. So this other doctor I see, it takes me a year to get that far enough into their place to see him, something like that. And he just shreds my paperwork, man, until there's not a shred of truth to this. So, I hadn't looked in a long time now because this is all older information now, older from like 1998. Initially, these studies was found on nicotine and schizophrenic brains that there's a beneficial medical effect. So, she recommended I take it for that purpose, the nicotine, and that MD, and so then she's going now for a few years at this point, I guess. So it's a couple of years or so, a few years maybe later this year, but she'll be going a few years this year, I guess. But so anyway, I decided, despite her and that conditioning and that appearing on page 222 in that first book of mine, In the Grip of Paranoid Schizophrenia, but third edition. But so she said it ended up on page 222 just magically somehow. I don't know if I went together. That's how it went together. But she talks about that nicotinic connection and corroborates it in the story of my book, and there was documentation in there about my experiences with it, and trying to live without it. And time release patch don't work. It's a study, additional studies found. So so okay. So January 25th, I started that day this year of 2023, where I just had pushed my nicotine back so far from when I got out of bed, so I didn't even need it anymore that day. It's cut discontinued it, and then I don't know, maybe 30 or 40 days went by, and I felt like really great. So I had all that crap out of my system, tissues in my brain and stuff, and vasoconstrictor makes you feel colder when you're older. You constrict your capillaries on the outside of your skin, and you feel cold easy. And from nicotine and being older, these are the things that it does, and actions it has on the human body. But that in itself, I didn't know it was considered an actual neurochemical, man. Or I would have maybe put up a more flag of a caution flag for myself to watch what I'm doing, because I went into this like strange state of mind, man, where I was like, it was just really strange. But it can be. The point is, it's because of this nicotinic receptor thing in schizophrenia. So the doctor who denies this is the one I was cussing on the last video, but people like him and deny that because they're way antiquated. Well, I hadn't Googled that in like a long time, and I have since then. Now, and the massive amount of documentation on negative symptoms and tobacco and schizophrenia and nicotine and schizophrenia, no matter how you Google it, it comes back a zillion freaking articles. So who are you going to believe? There's one doctor who says so. That made me unhappy. That there's a denier in this day and age of the actual all over the place truth, about nicotine. So that went from January 25th till it was like April 29th of 2023 when I got back on nicotine, and I'm stabilized on it again. I hate it, in a way, in my heart, it broke my heart that I have to re-addict myself to nicotine to function normally neuropsychiatrically. That just really pissed me off, man. That's not right. I mean, I'm talking to a number of other doctors who might be watching, but well, if you're in my shoes, what would you feel? I mean, let one of these professors tell us that. I mean, wonderful talks I see on YouTube on these little isolated topics, in revolving around schizophrenia, but part of it, aspect of it. But so that's great. That's all that resource is there, so you can learn more about yourself. But I'll tell you too, when you see so much things along with negative symptoms that there is no medication for, that I see in myself when I read about them, lots of video article on them, and so well, I don't know. They say there'll be medication for that in 5 to 10 years. So what do we got going in the meantime? Well, we might have something like, can you read that? Changing my mind, among others. Can you hear me? Changing my mind, among others. Lifetime writings and selected and introduced by the author, Timothy Leary. This is an interesting book, actually. And I read that like many years ago, decades ago when it was written, but in the 80s. But he started his own school. He was a psychologist, PhD, so he could do this. He started his own school. It's got graphs and stuff. I have to look at it again closer than I did, but I remember reading his own school of psychology he started in that book, where you change your mind among other people. It's a psychosocial, they call that psychosocial intervention for residual schizophrenics like me. Is all you can do is add people some psychosocial intervention and socialization of somebody's life, to help them when you want to start stabilize on medication. What are you going to do? And the rest of the medication isn't here yet. It'll make me, I don't know what it'll do to me. The one that made me well after being very sick was like profound, very profound, life-changing difference. Uh, but yeah, so that's what happened, man. I started, I got off of nicotine then like at some point I went into this like strange state of mind that was noticed by others, and then I realized I had to get back on nicotine, that there was something wrong, and then I find out it's like a neurochemical that works with dopamine in your brain, and that's part of the schizophrenic connection, and it's also part of being normal too, to have normal dopamine levels from your motivation and reward circuitry or whatever from your own efforts or whatever and motivations. It's all tied together. And these, is that the nicotinic receptors in the brain with schizophrenia? Now I forget how that goes. I get so far into things I forget where I started. It comes from working on computers, I think. Smile and laugh on that one. Anyway, how long is this? Oh, we're on at 8 minutes. So that's what happened, though. The nicotine messed with my mind, man, in a way I wasn't expecting. I apologize to all the people that had to put up with my, I don't know what it was considered, ranting or raving. I don't want to go back and look some of those threads, endless message threads. But I learned a lesson there. And that one I didn't learn. I learned, but I didn't know that the nicotine would do that, but deleting it. The cognitive symptoms came back. It proves the doctor studies, all the studies, the research studies that say that this nicotinic factor is true. And the one psychiatrist is I don't want to cuss at this point, I guess. There might be other doctors listening, but you can just delete the words you want, and I will delete them for you by not saying them. So thank me for that later when you see me. Talk to me or whatever. Write me or whatever, I don't care. But I'm here for your benefit to understand schizophrenia. I'm willing to participate. Well, it depends what it is. Contact me. See you then. Have a nice night. Bye now.